Okay, welcome back to Just Enough Garage. This is our Friday video. A few weeks ago, before the MR2 headlights, I showed you some stuff on the Suburban. Quickly, this is a timing light. You would connect that to the red and the black on your positive leads of your battery. This one will connect to the number one spark plug on the distributor. I have a distributor here. We'll go over that. As the rotation of the engine, as spark goes through that wire down to the spark plug, it sends a signal to this, and then the light will flash at that time when the firing of the spark plug is happening. And that what it does is it's like a projection. It'll slow down the timing visually so that you can see the mark and where the flywheel lines up, because it's spinning at 700-800 RPM, and this thing is timed just right, and you will be able to see the lines line up. So if they say 4 degrees, 5 degrees before top dead center, you then would rotate the distributor in the housing, and behind there's a nut that holds this down, a little spot, and you will actually be rotating. You see how that's stationary?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Did you tilt it so we can get some light on the lower half and see it better? There we go.
So there's a hold down. You loosen the nut. You don't take it off or anything. It's gear driven off the cam, which is in time with the crank through a chain. But you see how that rotates? The housing rotates, that doesn't rotate. So what you're actually doing is, this is a broken rotor, but if that rotor was on there, the distributor cap has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 4, 6, whatever your vehicle is. And as that lines up to there, it sends a signal to that spark plug, and away it goes. Now let's talk about the dwell for a second. The dwell, I don't know if you can see in there, Mary, I brought a light. If you can see in there, this has got 8 sides. It's an octagon. Okay, here, you have to hold the light too. Each one of those represents a position that matches the distributor cap. On this side, you can see that. Well, you can't. All right. Anyways, inside there, as that bumps over, if you look right there, see how these ones barely move? That's the high point. That, when it's on the top of that flat, not the flat this way, but the top of the peak, that's when you'd put your feeler gauge in there and you'd set your base timing for that distributor. What I was doing with the dwell is I was using this tool on the Suburban, or in this case, it's designed for both. You could use a screwdriver. These older ones had a cap that you open the door, and you would put that in there, and that, you can see, adjusts that as well. This is a condenser on the back. Most of the time when points are having trouble, high RPM missing and erratic spark, check that condenser. Sometimes if they just don't work, other times corrosion will get in there, because what that is doing is it is opening and closing. It's doing it hundreds of times a second. This wire, which has been changed to red because this is an old distributor, would connect to the negative side of your coil. The positive side would be power in for key switch, and then your main charge would come out of here to the wire, over to the top, and where inside. Now, this is a dual purpose distributor. One half of it's down here sending a signal back to that coil to fire. Every time this closes and opens, it breaks continuity, which then the windings, this power's in here going around and around and around. It'll then send the spark out the high voltage. It goes through a wire. Well, on here, GM was smart, square and round. You'll see there's a square and a round. So this can only go on one way. When you get it put on, that then is in time with the engine. Each one of those sparks, if you've gotten the wires in the right spot, each one of those then is going to send a spark at the time that it rotates around, so that when the piston's ready to accept that spark, boom, away she goes. Anyways, what I was trying to describe earlier was the dwell is the time that, what did you say on the video? There's a time in between the points contacting. Mm-hmm. It's basically hang time. How long is the point staying open? Anyways, you could do that fine-tuning, adjusting. Okay, all that is important. This is basic tune-up 101. But the spark plug, you see that gap in there? The spark plug gap has to do with points are going to be closed a little bit narrower. An HEI distributor or high voltage system, the spark will jump further, because what you're essentially doing is introducing spark into the combustion chamber, and as the wire sends out the high voltage to there, it goes down through the porcelain guard into this electrode, and it finds ground connecting from that tip. And you see how that's attached to that, and that's threaded into the engine block. So that creates the ground. All the spark is doing is jumping across, and at that exact moment, when everything's working right. The piston's up where it belongs. The fuel and air mixture is right. Boom, it makes a little explosion. It fires the piston right back down again and keeps it going. Just like if you were riding a bicycle. You're going to push right at the top of the bicycle thing and you're going to continue, and that's what's going to carry it. Well, if all 8 cylinders are doing that, only one is firing at a time. Boom, 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 boom. And that's just like you riding a bike. Anyways, spark plug gaps, extremely important depending on what kind of a system you have. This is an old-timey AC spark plug checker, and this is a NGKR. R means resistor for like radios, but I think this came out of the KTM some time ago. You would adjust that up. If you'll look right there, what does that say? 35 thousandths?
I can't
quite
tell. Yeah, there we go. I can tell looking at it with my eyes.
You can wiggle that, twist that, you can adjust it.
So, wait a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what it does is, I don't know if y'all can tell,
ramped.
but yeah, it goes from narrower to wider, and so it spreads that little contact gap. I guess they never connect, but...
No. Yeah, if this...
The little jump. If they're connected, you got a problem.
Yeah, it won't fire, or if it's too far and the spark can't go, it won't fire, or if it's full of crap from an oil burning engine, or you've dropped it like that on the table, and then
bunked it in,
and then you come back and you check it, and you're like, oh, okay, what did I get?
Because that spark arcing is the combustion in your engine.
Right, that needs to be there. It's an essential function. Anyways, this is a similar one. I don't know what this one's called, but anyways, it's a similar one. It just rotates around. It's the same idea. It's a ramp. So that's important. You can use a feeler gauge on that if you want to. I've hoped that I've covered the basics of it. So what you need for an engine to run is fuel, air, compression, and spark. Okay. You need to have all of those. So a lot of the will it run videos, you'll see that people will take the air cleaner off right away, and you'll see that there's even mice nests. They'll take the interior out, they'll put it in. So if you don't do that, you're not going to get any air. The engine won't run. You'll see that they clean the fuel tanks and the fuel lines, because if you don't have clean fuel, then you're not getting the mixture. The carburetor jets are very small. Someday we can take apart a carburetor again and kind of go over the jets. But then you need to have the spark. A lot of these, they'll either flick that point like this with their screwdriver, and what they're doing is basically knocking off the corrosion, because these things are susceptible to moisture and stuff. It's not a sealed system. The cap just sets on there. And once they get the spark, it may run, but in order to get it to run correctly, you need to have all the functions. All the spark plug wires have to have the correct resistance. The points have to be set up right. The coil has to be strong enough. The timing has to be on. The dwell has to be correct. The spark plug gap has to be correct. If you get all that running, most V8 engines will run, but they may not run good, or they may not run well. Well, it's getting that worked out. And vacuum leaks are a big issue with them. Reading your plugs. This was in a 2-stroke some time ago. I changed it just because I do every year for sure. But this corrosion and this black stuff inside here can cause erratic spark. So, there's things going on. Anyways, the last item on the table is more modern. This is a cheapy $35 code reader. Cars after 2002,
somewhere in the early 2000s.
The OB2 readers. This book is a simple book. If you have a newer car and you've got the check engine light on, the check engine light on is sometimes just telling you there's an issue or a maintenance item. If it's flashing and it's panicking,
if it's flashing red, then you got a real problem.
Anyways, if you look inside this book, it came with it. It'll tell you what the codes are and what they mean. I have to put my glasses on, but it'll tell you oxygen sensors, crank sensors, any of that junk. And you can go through and connect it. There's a program for it.
Where do you plug it in?
Under the dash, typically there's a thing that matches that. There's an old and a new one. This is for the newer one. I use that on the Subaru stuff. Anyways, for tune-ups, you can get those cheap. I know that there's ones you can plug in and use your cell phone on. People at auto parts stores will read the code. Okay, we can go later into what does that mean. A lot of the times they're just a little sensor that's similar to a spark plug. It's threaded in and there's a wire on it, like all the exhaust system. What that is it's collecting an oxygen sensor. There's some before and after catalytic converters. And what they're telling the computer is to do is lean or richen it out. Your crank sensors and your cam sensors have got to be in phase. So they're telling you if the engine's rotating. So if the timing belt breaks, it shuts off the fuel and in the engine, obviously. But there's things that are happening in that tune-up series that sometimes can flash a code. Well, my opinion's always been if the car's a few years old, just replace the sensors. Okay, You can do one at a time. You can do a couple at a time. You can test them. But a lot of this stuff is coming from overseas, and sometimes they're not. I've bought brand new ones that haven't worked before.
Aftermarket's never going to be as good as the original.
Right.
That's just any part. It's going to be that way.
And exactly right. And you can go buy the factory part from the factory dealer, and sometimes it's better, sometimes it's not. Some people, so there's always a mystery, there's always a thing. So if you're a person who's a little bit younger, get educated. You're going to have to spend some money to learn through the hard knocks of life. That's the way it goes. You're going to have to collect these tools, find these tools. If you're working on older stuff, you need these tools. If you're an older person, you're already gone down this path, hey, pass that knowledge on to somebody else. Let them learn, let them understand. This is just a quick overview. It's our Friday video. I'm trying to make it short, but it all of a sudden isn't short, so I apologize. Look for us next week. We've got that little Subaru up and going. We've put several hundred miles on it. I hope it's a great video, and you guys can look forward to seeing what we can do. Thanks.